Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've seen Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado, or just, in this country, it's just Sicario 2 Soldado.
Right.
Soldado means soldier.
You're such a whiz.
I know all...
A linguist.
All the languages.
A linguist and a gentleman.
Sicario, the first one, was back in 2015. It was directed by Denis Villeneuve. It's got a really good reputation. It made good money. Was very popular. It was about the war on drugs between the US on Mexico, and it was well paced and careful and dark, and erupted into violence in these amazing set pieces. It was a lot better than I've been conditioned to sort of expect films like this to be. Do you know what I mean? It was sort of a surprise, I think, that it was getting a sequel, because it made money, but it didn't make that much money.
No.
And there didn't seem to be a place for a sequel to go, really. Like, the story had been told, it seemed. In this film, they lose Emily Blunt. There's no Emily Blunt. The focus is on Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin's characters, who return. And I like the way they interact in this. I don't know about you. I like they seem very big on screen somehow. Like, these are two huge stars.
Yes.
And it's almost like Heat or something. When they interact on screen, it feels big and important. But they're not on together all that much.
No.
They split up.
I mean, they're two of my favorite actors, and they're very charismatic, and they're both very good actors, without really being like in the top rank of stardom. And so this really felt like an opportunity to see them, interact and interplay. And I think, in a way, that's what the film offers, though not as much as one would like. I also very much like seeing Matthew Modine's appearance as the Secretary of State. He's someone like along the same lines. So so there was this period in the 80s where everyone thought he'd become a big star, and then he didn't quite. But he's become kind of an interesting presence in films. So all of those aspects I enjoyed. But the film, to me, seems like a programmer. Yeah, no more than a programmer, actually. So, there are enjoyable things.
What's a programmer?
A programmer would be like, in the Hollywood era, it would be a film that was made only to pick up the slack in the bill. So it wasn't an A production. It wasn't one of the super expensive things that the whole studio was behind and geared and with big stars. It was, normally the kind of thing that they churned out so that the theaters would have enough product to keep changing the programs.
Yeah. So it was like a filler song on an album.
Exactly, kind of like
not
that.
The single.
That's right. So this feels a little bit like that, it's kind of proficient. It's not unenjoyable. It has a lot of problems. If you like action movies, it passes away 2 hours very well. But actually, nothing in it is very memorable to me. I don't know about you.
Memorable is probably the word. I had a really good time. I guess I thought. Well, the film opens on probably half an hour, 40 minutes of pretty high, sort of intense action for a long time. It gets right into it. There's very little downtime until Del Toro is with the girl at the deaf guy's house. That's the only time the film sort of calms down, really. There are a couple of scenes with meetings, and there's a story of the young kid who's just being introduced at that time. But it's the kind of tempo really is very, very high for most of it, which I really appreciated. I thought, this is getting right into it, and in a way, it kind of felt less careful than the first film. But I actually appreciated sort of how I liked. I would say I preferred the sort of intensity of the speed of the film, if you like, but I definitely liked it. But it wasn't really messing around, And I thought, is it it starts off being kind of silly. So it opens up on the border again between the US and Mexico, but instead of drugs being the what's being moved across, it's now people. And not only is it people, it's terrorists.
No.
I said to you at the start, like, they've combined America's two worst fears, Mexicans and Muslims.
No.
Literally, they smuggle terrorists, suicide bombers across the border, and then suicide bombs explode, and I think it's Kansas.
Yes.
This is how the film opens. So America decides it wants to, take disproportionate action on Mexico because they're a military junta.
But I thought there was something wrong with that, actually, because I kept waiting for that to somehow be developed and to become part of the rest of the film. And it isn't. So, kind of the only point being made at the beginning is that, now to transport people is bigger business than to transport drugs. Mm-hmm. There are all these cartels that kind of operate in this corrupt government, right? And, yeah.
Yeah, you're waiting
for... You lose the Muslim bit, like, after the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's absolutely for sure. And I think people have been saying how the film is timely. Because obviously the conversation that's going on right now is not just about migration, illegal migration, but it's also about the sort of wildly disproportionate American response to it right now in the separation of children from their families, which is not exactly something that the film picks up on. I mean, it would be amazing if the film did predict that, but it's certainly the kind of fear of illegal immigration from Mexico is something that the film is sort of building on, I guess, but it's not really saying anything. And I spent a little while kind of trying to find what it was saying, and in the end, gave up because it's not really. No. Well, if anything, it's not actually talking about illegal immigration. If anything, it's talking about the American response to it, but it's not even really doing that.
No, well, the interesting thing about it is the openness with which the film treats American interventionism.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't try to hide it. Basically, the Americans are just kidnapping, the child of one of the drug lords because, if you want to create a stir in a place, you kidnap their prince, is what we're told.
This was a fantastic scene, and I wrote this down, so I really loved it. It's all in this really heightened kind of regal language. They talk about, as you say, killing kings. Josh Brolin says, I don't see the point of killing a king because you create 50 more. And they talk about if you want to get the king to start the war, so kidnap the prince, which is when you're talking about taking the kid. And then there's something else which was more subtle, which was the defense secretary saying, he says to Josh Brolin, these tactics that you used in the Middle East, will they work in Mexico? And Josh Brolin says, they will if you want them to, which has a kind of, like, if you will it, you are the king kind of feeling to it.
Well, no, I felt that line had more to do. They will if you want them to. If you support us, they will. Yeah. If you don't support it, then they won't. And actually, that is what ends up happening, right? Halfway through the operation, they back off because they can't deal with, the media reverb from it, right? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I wasn't bored for once, but actually it left me nonplussed. And I think actually, in comparison to the first film, what is missing is the kind of moral conscience that Emily Blunt brought to it, right? Because she was the FBI or the whatever, the person who played by the book,
new recruit, I think.
Yeah, who believed in the rules, right? And actually, this doesn't, and nobody does, and. So it feels, and actually that in itself could be really interesting. I don't mind that. So I don't mind if you're brought into this corrupt world and, and there's this cynicism and everything is goal-orientated. But actually very interesting that the film pauses goal-orientated to keep things the same, to keep on churning money, right? Like, it's not about solving a problem or whatever. It's actually to keep the business going. And by that is meant also the military, the diplomacy, the drug thing, the people trafficking thing, right? I thought that was very interesting. But then I thought the film cops out because it actually gets sentimental about the child. So I think if you're going to follow that line of corruption, So what ends up happening is that the Americans think you have to kill the child, right? Because she's seen us, right? And it could reveal it. So, you could understand why Benicio del Toro might want to protect the child, right? But the Josh Brolin character is, all of a sudden he gets sentimental. I mean, he's probably blown up thousands of kids. Why get sentimental about this one? Right, so I thought that was like, if you really want to depict a morally murky and corrupt world, then do so consistently. Don't back off at the end.
Did he get sentimental?
Yes, he did. Well, he said something like, "We'll put her into witness protection."
Oh, that's right. Put her into witness protection because he says to the bosses, "Fuck them all." Yeah. That's the attitude he takes basically halfway through the film. It's just fuck them all because things start sort of going against him. Yeah, maybe. I mean, he certainly got sentimental about Benicio del Toro.
That I could understand.
Yeah.
Though I also think that the film doesn't develop that well. So, for example, I love the whole thing where he got shot, and you kind of know something's going to happen because you don't see his face. So actually, for a moment, I thought that actually it was somebody else that might have been shot, and he'd appear from somebody else. But no, it turns out it really is him, right? But I didn't like the way the film ended. So
the very, very end.
Yeah,
I thought
like you don't know what happens. I would have liked him to have found shelter. So what happens is, he's had a bullet through both cheeks. He's losing blood like anything. He ends up fighting people. Then he gets to the side of the road where you think, oh God, that's over. And then he begins to move again, right? Mm-hmm. But he's just on the road. And actually the shot isn't even held that long. So if the shot had been held longer, you could say, okay, he's now on his way home. But it doesn't even do that. So actually you expect something. You expect something like... and I think just leaving the audience there and then presenting him 1 year later. Well, what happened in that year? Like, I mean, that's important information.
That coda is purely there to set up a third film.
Yes, but it's very unfair to the audience.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And also to show you that he's got his nice, pretty face back. Yeah. I mean, I was hoping for like half his jaw to have been shot off. It was a bullet to the face. Yeah. But he comes back, he's just got like a pinprick through both cheeks, and he's like, but I'm still Benicio del Toro.
Yes. Also, there's another...
I did think he might have been dead. Did you think there was any danger of him actually having died, or did you think he's going to be all right?
No, I thought there was a possibility that he might die on the way, which is why I expected something else. I either expected him to reach shelter of some kind, like a petrol station or something, or to see him like...
What about, when he was actually shot and lying on the ground? I thought that was... I thought... It's funny because there's no tension in the film. Despite the fact that you've got him at gunpoint being held by the cartel, the girl, he's there. It should be dripping with tension,
and it's not,
and it isn't.
And that's a problem.
It should be a problem, but actually,
I think it is a problem.
It should be a problem, but I didn't find it a problem. I still found the film really exciting. So although when he's eventually shot in the face, it was a surprise to me. I didn't go, oh my God. I kind of went, ooh, that's interesting. They shot Benicio del Toro.
I thought that was one of the most gripping scenes, actually. The thing about getting that young child to do it, and then, and actually the moment where he lifts his face and you see the blood dripping out, it really, had an impact on me. So I like that. But I do think there's a problem that the film lacks tension, and actually part of the reason why the film lacks tension is because you don't know who to root for. There's nothing at stake in it, in a way, So I think that is a problem. I also thought that there was a problem between the way that things were visualized and the way that scenes were built. So actually, the film has very beautiful lighting. Again, very intricate lighting. Yeah, but the shots themselves are very not memorable, really, and also not expressive. It's usually kind of a wide shot. Yeah, so I thought almost all the scenes, including the action scenes, lack tension. So, you had laughs and jolts, like, the scene where he throws the bomb in the car. Yeah, it's it feels almost funny.
Oh, it's a joke.
Yeah, but, there's nothing at stake. There should be something about him almost dying on his last legs, now being chased by another car. You should be feeling something. And and you don't, or I don't.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and this is what I'm saying. Like, that lack of tension should be a problem for me. You know, the film is the world that these characters are in is brutal and unforgiving, and you know, Benicio del Toro survives by the skin of his teeth. You know, he's got a bullet through his face. He's tied up. His head kind of bandaged and taped up, whatever. And everyone thinks he's dead. There's no one coming for him. He's losing a lot of blood, and yet he gets out of it. Like, it's a fucking brutal place to be. So you should be feeling tension and danger everywhere, and you're just not. The film feels like a knockabout sort of light-hearted film almost. Like, despite the fact that it's violent and dealing with some kind of dark subject matter.
I also didn't like...
But I had no problem with that. I had a good time.
I have problems with it.
But it is too light. I mean, I can't...
I had problems with it, and I think there's also ideological things with it, because I don't know if you noticed, but, you know, almost none of the Americans on the mission are lost.
No.
You know, whereas the Mexicans drop off like flies. Their lives don't matter. And it's not just because you don't know them, because actually, you know, like in the American team, you just know the protagonists. All the others, like, they could have lost a few, but actually they don't. You know, and I think that speaks of a particular kind of treatment of others.
Yes.
That you know, I found a problem with. I also thought certain things weren't well developed enough. So, you know, there's meant to be a kind of a homology between the male child who chooses to, you know, to join, you know, the gang, and the girl who is in, you know, the princess of that, you know, cartel. You know, so there's a kind of a homology that's kind of done there. There's a kind of a homology between Benicio del Toro losing his daughter and, you know, now being with this other girl, you know, and they're kind of plonked there, but they're not really worked through kind of in a way that resonates or that has an emotional impact. So I thought, you know, for all of those reasons, the film to me was a disappointment.
Yeah, I did quite like Del Toro and the little girl, I think. Like, there was a little bit of complexity in there because Del Toro lost his daughter to cartel murder, basically. And the girl's dad is the guy who was in charge of the guy who did it. So that he's the sort of... basically, he says, I'm an enemy of your dad's.
Yes.
But he also is kind of the understanding that she's a 16-year-old girl and she didn't do anything. He's looking after her.
Yes.
But there is this kind of tension there, like he's looking after her, but for the guy who is responsible for basically everything going wrong in his life, and a huge amount of pain in his life. And then is she a kind of replacement for his daughter? Like, or is he kind of latching onto her for that reason? But as you say, it's not developed. But I liked what was there.
The film doesn't resonate emotionally, and actually all of the human relationships could have been further developed with not very much. So actually, I would have liked more to have been made out of the friendship between Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro. There's clearly one, and it's clearly not just a professional one, right? Like, so, you know, obviously they're both professionals, and, you know, there's that kind of Hoxian thing about doing your job properly is part of what makes you a man. Yeah. But actually, you know, there's also kind of affection and humor. Like you say, the screen lights up when they're together. There's something about their interplay. So why not develop just that, you know, that bit further, right? Have some emotional resonance when there's a loss, you know, which the film tries for, but it's very weakly so, you know. So, and I also think... I mean, Benicio del Toro is wonderful, and I love the way that he speaks softly when negotiating very complex and very difficult situations. His voice lowers, and, you know, he begins a negotiation. I love the way that he characterizes this person. But I think the affective relationships are not, you know, they're almost not there, you know.
I really enjoyed when Del Toro and the girl get to the farm, and they start talking to the deaf guy, or he starts talking to the deaf guy because he knows sign language. Because not only, I mean, that's not only him being quiet, he's silent.
Yes.
Like, the film has been loud and brash,
yes,
and kind of bright and noisy up until now, and it cuts everything out, and it's this calm sort of. He's got a massive gun on him, so he's saying, "Calm down, I'm not going to hurt you or anything. We need help," and the tone changes pretty abruptly. Do you think it was too much? Do you think it was kind of wrong-headed? I really enjoyed it.
What I was feeling during that is that they could have made it so much better and more, by just making that lull, i.e. that they're in the middle of a threat. So I would have liked maybe some cross-shooting between, someone now knows where they are and they're out to get them, or, just, to have like kind of, this, what they feel is a lull, be signaled as temporary whilst they're kind of working out more emotive things. I mean, there's a way of adding layers to scenes like that, and I think this is too one note. Yeah,
maybe. But I guess, that is kind of brought in when, because then at the same time, Josh Brolin's character is told, you're no longer in charge of this. Catherine Keener's taken over. Catherine Keener says, right, kill everyone.
Yeah.
So then he calls Del Toro, this interesting phone call where he says, I've got to come and kill you, basically.
I know, but that happens after.
No, that happens in the middle. That happens while he takes the phone call when he's in the flat, doesn't it?
He leaves the house to take the phone call.
Yeah,
yes.
But they're staying there at the time. So,
yeah. Okay.
And then that kind of makes them leave.
But that's.
I know what you mean, though. It's not like it's certainly not under any. They're not under any sort of threat, really like imminent while they're there. They are allowed to take a few minutes to themselves.
Yes. Anyways, so
I should have problems with this film. I mean, for all the reasons you've described, and some of the reasons I've described. Like I say, there's no tension.
Well,
and that it has a really cavalier attitude to killing Mexicans, and said, but the Americans are all going to be fine. Don't worry about it. I shouldn't have problems with this. I wouldn't say it feels like propaganda in the way that a Michael Bay film does, for instance.
No,
but it is a problem.
For me, the reason why I called it a programmer is because it's not offensive. I wasn't bored at all, right? And so, you do spend an enjoyable couple of hours. But I think nothing is memorable. And, there are very talented people here. I mean, I read that the screenwriter was the screenwriter of High and Low, or what was it called?
I don't know. He was screenwriter of the first film.
But also that, that really wonderful film with Chris Pine, Hell and High Water.
Yes. Yes.
So, kind of, there's nothing offensive. I loved watching the actors. Some scenes are non-stop action, right? So, so it's like one of those old westerns. Like you know what you're going to get. It does the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, but kind of, you're not going to remember it like a John Ford or an Anthony Mann western or something. There's nothing memorable in it. That's the way I feel about this film.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it maintains some of the darkness of the first film. Particularly the end where you've got this kid who you've been watching this kid, the boy this is, throughout the film, kind of thinking, is he going to he's getting involved in this gang that smuggles people across the border? Is he going to sort of? He seems to be on the fence, right? So which way is he going to tip? And then by the time you get to the coda, it's 1 year later. He's the one who shot Benicio del Toro in the face. He was kind of forced to by the people in charge of the gang.
He almost had no choice, right? He saw the first one who refused got killed, so
exactly. So he had to do it. Then you see a year later, all of a sudden he's covered in tattoos. He seems to have a harem following him, and then Del Toro confronts him, having tracked him down. I thought that was really funny. You must have heard me laughing when he comes through walks in the door, and Benicio del Toro is standing there looking at him, and he's going, "Fucking hell, I killed you!" Like that was I found that really, really funny. But then he gone.
I didn't. But actually, what puzzles me about that young man is, when they're all heading back, so he's just killed Del Toro, and they're heading back, the whole gang, and they're kind of celebrating in a way, obviously the kid's first time killing, whatever, and he leaves the truck and says, "Drop me off here," and they're all celebrating and he's not, and I couldn't quite, I mean, I got it, but you get a feeling that there's more that, why did he choose to leave at that moment,
Well, I think the film, I guess, for what I took that as was he's just killed someone, and this is, as I said, this is the kid who's been on the fence the whole time, and so he's done something. He's done the worst thing you can do, really, and he is struggling with it. He was forced into it. Like I say, it wasn't exactly his choice because he would have died. So he's struggling, and he just can't be in that place with everyone else in the back of the truck going, woo, hey, what about...
I know, but to be left in the middle of nowhere,
But I think, I mean, that's probably the place you want to be if you've just had to shoot someone in the face.
I think you're making...
No, but I got that. But what was disappointing was that they just kind of left him there, and then you pick up a year later, and okay, so now he's this hardcore gangster covered in tattoos and the rest. Like, as you say, what the fuck happened in that year?
Yeah.
That is disappointing, and even when he's looking at Del Toro at the end of the film, I think it still maintains that ambiguity about him. Like, okay, so he's clearly playing the part of this
of the
gangster
tattoos now.
But he sees Del Toro, and he's still a little kid, terrified, especially terrified because someone's just come back from the dead in front of him.
Yes.
But he doesn't sort of know where he is, and then Del Toro says, "So you want to be a Sicario," which is a
Let's
hitman.
talk.
Let's talk, and this is how the film ends. And it's disappointing narratively because it leaves this big open question, and then obviously they want to make a third film, I guess. But
But you didn't care.
I sort of didn't like. If they make a third one, I'll go and see it.
I will as well.
And if it's like this one, what I mean, I'll go and see it, and I'll have a really good time.
Actually, I'm thinking, if I can find some time later on tonight, I'm going to go see the first one again.
Yeah.
So it kind of.
The first one was great. The bit in the traffic jam was fucking amazing in the first film. That's the bit I remember most.
I can't remember it well.
Fantastic
which is
tense
why
scene.
I want to.
I mean, that is the kind of tension this film should have had.
Yes.
But I mean, it's two different worlds. Denis Villeneuve is on top of the fucking world at the minute.
But it's not just that anyway. I mean, I'm interested in the thing that you don't care, that actually it offered, it offered you certain satisfaction. So maybe kind of summarizing them would be a good way to kind of finish this podcast. So kind of, what were the satisfactions that you got out of the film?
It sounds it sounds stupid, but because I don't know when people say this, but I liked that I could sort of switch off. I liked that it became fairly clear fairly early on that it wasn't going to deal with the subject matter with the seriousness that the first film did, and that it sort of made up for that by just being really exciting, really high tempo, and having these two, big stars, kind of in charge of every scene. It had some sort of fun dialogue. Like, I don't want to make it sound like it was like a like a action adventure or like a Rambo or something. Like, it wasn't like that. It's still kind of hinting at certain darkness, And like I say, the landscape is brutal, and I think it conveys that pretty well. But as you say, like it's like those westerns, or it's what you go to the cinema for. You want to have a bit of fun.
Okay.
I don't know. It's like I say, I should have problems, but I don't. I'm just cool with it.
Okay. Well, that's a good note to end up on. So thank you for listening. We are on iTunes, SoundCloud, Facebook, and Twitter. So do drop us a line if there's an aspect of the film that has caught your attention and that we've somehow bypassed, or if you have a different view than us on the film itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Because we do that all the time.
Right on, let's end it here.